right, Mary. Well, we're back for part 2 in our conversation on what is a directee. And as soon as we finished the last conversation, you told me a pretty great story. And then you told me, I asked you if you want to share it, and you said, well, if it comes up. Well, I think it's coming up now. What was that story, Mary?
You're bringing it up. Okay. It's not exactly about spiritual direction, and it's not my experience, but it's a powerful one. One of the sisters in the city here was working as a prison chaplain. Mm-hmm. And she told us that she was cleaning her office where she used to see people. And she noticed a spot beside the chair that the clients or the guys who would come in and talk to her, where they would sit. And it was just this white, powdery stuff. And then she realized that was the salt from the tears that the guys wept when they spoke to her. Imagine that.
Oh my goodness.
Months and years of tears right at their feet.
Marked in the concrete
marked
there.
in the rug.
Oh my goodness. And what would you say, or maybe she told you, but what would she have said they were seeking?
Release.
Yeah.
Relief. Forgiveness.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of them would have been lonely. Many of them might have been remorseful. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But something of their inner experience was coming out as tears. Yeah.
That is, I don't even know the word to describe what that is. That image is going to be in my mind, the salt on the rug. Yeah. After how many years was that sister the prison chaplain?
She was for quite a few years. I don't remember. Her name was Carol Ann Peliquin, and she died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. When a directee comes, the point is not to have them cry. We don't want to make people cry. Mm-hmm. But when they do, it's a sign that something's moving.
Yes.
And when I experienced it, and kind of jumping ahead of our questions, but I had one directee who, when I would ask him to take a moment of quiet and ask Jesus something that we had been talking about, he would often tear up, and like a man, he would kind of swallow the tears. But they were there. And when I would, after some silence, he would kind of come back to the present time, and he would, I would say, you seem to be moved to tears. What was going on? And it was usually that he felt loved in some way, that he felt close to Christ, that he felt like he was a brother of Jesus, that he had a companion, something. Mm-hmm. So tears come for many reasons, but it was a consolation.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because when was this? Like maybe last year or something, I began taking very, very superficial, casual notes on certain dynamics at work in spiritual direction sessions. I mean, I take notes, but this was a very different kind of notes. You'll see what I mean. So I did this for 31 appointments, over the course of 31 appointments, and I just made a note of how many appointments featured tears. Mm. What would your guess be out of 31 appointments? How many appointments?
30.
Close, 21.
Wow.
21. And yeah, you're right to say that we don't don't want to make people cry. We don't want to even look at tears as the sole criteria for a good session or
Right.
for something happening in their life with God. And at the same time, 21 out of 31 appointments featured tears. And I feel like that has been a pretty common and steady feature of spiritual direction, as long as I've been part of it, is that people do cry for all sorts of reasons, as you mentioned. And like going back to the sister in the prison, like clearly people need to cry in some ways for the purposes of release or whatever. Crying, as you said so beautifully, is a form of prayer. The tears are a form of prayer, you know?
The spiritual writers of the past talked about the tears of compunction.
Yeah.
That and the gift of tears.
Yes.
Speak of both.
Well, St. Ignatius describes tears as one of the markers of spiritual consolation and in that sense a gift and a grace of God, you know?
Yeah.
And so when directees come to spiritual direction, I'm not sure what we could say about it, but there's something in them that needs to be expressed or released or healed or comforted or consoled. And sometimes it comes out, it manifests as tears, as a gift of tears. And I've often thought that's so kind of God, because sometimes it's so hard to put things into words. Not just the euphoric experiences, but the sort of the agonizing experiences. It's so hard to find the language for this experience, and tears are a language in and of themselves.
Yes.
And directees sometimes want to express something. They want to express some kind of language, you know, to God or in the presence of God or whatever.
And I found it helpful to ask directees what the tears are.
Yes.
What are the tears coming from? What are you feeling as you weep these tears?
That's right, yeah.
Because it helps them notice that they are touched, that they feel loved, that, many things. So it's helping them to notice the meaning behind.
That's right.
But I think that tears in themselves are doing something.
Yes. Healing.
Don't have to put words, but sometimes it helps.
Yeah. I think Ignatius describes it in his Discernment of Spirits as tears that express the heart's consolation in God. You know, something of that sort. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you brought up that sister who worked in the prison, and although she may have not called herself a spiritual director and may not have called those gentlemen that she met with directees, in a lot of ways we could say that they were functioning as directees, right? And she was functioning as a director. So here's a question for you. You know, based on the fact that we've sketched out a few reasons as to why people may come to spiritual direction, why they may become directees, what they're seeking. Can anyone be a directee? Like, does spiritual direction have benefit for any and everyone, regardless of who they are or where they're coming from? What would you say?
I would say if they want to benefit from spiritual direction relationship, if they want to. I don't think it's a certain kind of person that qualifies, but they do need to be willing to be coached, perhaps. They need to be able to trust. And some people, are wounded in their ability to trust. So it might not be something that could be beneficial.
Yeah.
But that's going a little bit astray. I think anybody can benefit from spiritual direction if they're willing to enter the process, if they're able to trust. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't see anyone excluded by age or ability or status in life, vocation in life, orientation. I mean, I think I would receive people who are, regardless of their faith, but probably I could be a better director to person, to a Christian, probably.
Right.
But that doesn't mean others couldn't come.
Yeah.
They could benefit. Actually, there's a whole movement of the Jewish spiritual direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder, because I've thought about this too, I wonder if people aren't able or wanting to see the transcendent within or underneath some of those elements you said, the vital and the functional, if their focus is only and exclusively on those domains, even though we know that the transcendent permeates all of those things, but if their focus is like, I hear you're asking me about God and my work, but really I just want to know how to get this employee to do this thing. If their focus is kind of more, I don't know what the right word is, but more like it's like they're closed off and they're just so focused on what's right in front of their nose. I think they wouldn't benefit from spiritual direction. And I actually have had directees who drop off because they realize that I wasn't really that interested in just helping them write that email to their employees or whatever, you
or
know,
their boss. Thank you for saying that, because that's what I mean by, you've articulated more specifically, but when I say if they're willing to enter into the process, the process is going deeper, noticing more, going beyond the present situation to move. So I would agree with you. If somebody is so focused, maybe on a past hurt, that's the only thing they can bring up. Or if they just want an answer to a particular question or a solution, a quick solution for something, no, they can't benefit from spiritual, because they're not coming for what spiritual direction can offer them.
That's right, yeah. I've sometimes likened it to, you know, because sometimes students will say, this directee, it just seems like there's nothing, no matter what I ask, there's nothing really of substance there for them to explore. Like they give me one-word answers or whatever. And of course, there's a whole host of reasons as to what may be going on. But sometimes I've likened it to, we're just in the shallow end of the pool. There's really not much depth. Maybe they haven't lived long enough, or maybe they haven't experienced enough hardship or suffering to have some of those steady answers be shaken, you know, or maybe they've not ever been invited into more kind of conscious introspection or reflection about their life. So we're just in a shallower end of water. And so no matter what we do in spiritual direction, even if you're the most virtuous spiritual director in the world, you just don't have as much material to work with. And I think those kinds of people likely will not stay in spiritual direction that long. It may not be meaningful to them. I've said everything I need to say. I mean, God is great.
I'm finished.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm thinking of a couple directees I've had. There was one lady who was a youth leader, maybe in her mid-20s or something like that. And she came to spiritual direction, I think encouraged by her church leadership to do so. And most all of the sessions were about her youth leading, like her work. You know, different dilemmas, different dynamics, talking with parents, talking with students. And try though I might to take things to a deeper level, eventually I just came to this realization, that's all that there is for this person. Until they lost their job. And then it was like the floor just went out from underneath us and we dropped several levels of depth in the conversation. And interestingly enough, sadly, in some ways, they actually discontinued spiritual direction, given all the chaos, you know.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting. The moment that they lost their job, we had so much more to explore in their life and prayer and experience of God.
You know, one of our contemporary spiritual teachers is Richard Rohr, and he says, what helps us most is great love and great suffering.
Yeah.
That's when we can go deep.
Yeah. That's right.
It's a very good example.
And you don't often get one without the other.
That's right.
My son was asking me just as a sidebar, Dad, do you like Good Friday or Easter Sunday better?
Oh.
And I was like, I guess if I had to pick, it would be Easter Sunday, but you can't really have Easter without Friday, and you can't really have great love without great suffering either.
And he doesn't like Jesus suffering.
No, he doesn't.
No.
That's right.
Who does? But
Yes, that's right. Here's another question. What makes for a good, and I put that in quotation marks, a good directee, meaning someone who benefits from spiritual direction, someone who can sustain spiritual direction, maybe more than, a month or two, like for years, let's say. What kinds of qualities make up a directee who can benefit from and sustain spiritual direction over the long haul? What would you say?
committed.
Yeah.
Somebody who makes a commitment. I saw a clergy man, for over 20 years. And I think there was only one time that he canceled because, and I hope I'm not giving it away if they're listening, but his wife's pet died. And he felt it was more important to be with his wife.
Yeah.
I think that he may have been a little bit late and always would tell me, but he was really committed.
So not flaky.
Not flaky.
Yeah.
Not casual about it, but yes, committed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what makes for a good directee, although I don't like the title, good or...
I know.
But somebody who's ready to put in the work, because it is work. When I'm directing, when I used to direct, it's work.
Yeah.
You're paying attention, you're listening, you're thinking, you occasionally are sending up a prayer, help me, I don't know what to do next.
Occasionally.
Occasionally. So somebody who's ready, willing, committed to noticing more about their life, to asking questions or being asked questions, someone who's willing to explore, to go deeper, someone who's willing to savor their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have a good experience. My spiritual director, one time, when I almost apologized for sharing good things, he said, I don't want to just hear about, sorrows and trouble. This is good. So, you almost feel guilty saying, I had these wonderful experiences. No, being ready to savor your experiences, like really savor them, not just say, oh, I had a good prayer, I felt loved. Well, let's explore that a little bit. Let's savor that.
Yeah.
Like you do a good dark chocolate or a candy or a good wine, monasterio.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Somebody who's willing to trust, to entrust their truth to somebody.
Yes, I like what you said. I had written down for myself as well, somebody who has a degree of self-awareness, and wants to become more aware as well. I think you use the word explore, reflecting, stuff like that. Like they're willing to look at themselves honestly, truthfully.
Yeah, certain humility.
Yeah.
Which is truth.
Yeah. In the Nemec and Coombs book that we have talked about before in previous episodes, they say that a person has to have a certain degree of openness to truth. Mm-hmm. They want to see life, their own life, God, themselves, as truthfully and straightforwardly as possible without illusion, right?
Yeah. What you said just now made me think of one of the books on this shelf. As I was going through this the other day, I came across one of the books that has influenced me most since my 20s is something that was first an article and then it became a little booklet called Praying Our Experiences.
Lovely title.
Praying Our Experiences. Someone who's willing to pray their experiences, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly? Pray your experiences.
Put them out before a director. Put them out before God.
Yeah.
and hear what God has to say about them, because we know what we think of them, our experiences.
Yeah.
But what if God thinks of those experiences differently?
Mm-hmm.
What if I think I'm a schmuck and God says, I see you trying. Every time you fail, you get up.
Yeah. Right. A willingness to have one's life, kind of consciously put into the light of Christ,
Yes.
the light of God.
And to hear and feel and see what God says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Praying our experiences.
Again, in the Nemec and Coombs book, because I love that book so much, as you know, they say that a couple other what they call preconditions, preconditions for directees benefiting from direction. One is having a life of reflection, which you said, but specifically a life of solitary prayer. That's how they define reflection. Mm-hmm. And then also a willingness to manifest their heart, and a willingness to be vulnerable is the way we might say it, And the solitary prayer one is interesting to me because not that I think directees have to pray for hours alone in contemplation or anything like that, but they have to be willing to have sat with themselves in some measure. And so solitary prayer, where their defense mechanisms are a little bit lowered, where their distractions are put aside, where they're sitting with themselves, with God, and relating to God in that solitude, that I think is a real helpful ingredient into what directees bring and how they benefit from spiritual direction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Certainly. I think that some people have been formed in the belief that it's enough just to say your prayers and go to church.
Correct.
But there's so much more for people. And just the other day, one of our sisters said she was brought up with a lot of devotions. And when she joined the community, she said she thought she was better than the sisters because she had more devotions. But now she sees that the liturgy of the hours and Lectio Divina are important.
Yeah.
And I feel badly for people in the pews, if they still go, that they think that's all there is for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's not feeding them, even more so.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to say there is something else.
Yes, that's right. There is something else.
Yeah, there's something else for them personally.
Yes.
Because there's lots going on in people's lives that doesn't get addressed in church.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Fleshing out the manifestation of the heart, or what I called vulnerability. It's like a particular kind of vulnerability where you're sharing honestly about your experience and maybe even your experience of God. And so in that Nemec and Coombs book, they reference St. Basil. I think you'll like this quote. Again, the gendered language notwithstanding. But St. Basil says, if someone wants to make any progress, he must not conceal any movement in the soul. Rather, they should reveal the secrets of their heart to those whose office it is to exercise a compassionate and sympathetic solicitude for the weak. By practicing such openness, we shall gradually be made perfect. And one more, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. St. Francis de Sales. De Sales, yeah. You're the French expert, apparently.
Not by any means.
But he says, open your heart to your director with all sincerity and fidelity, manifesting clearly and explicitly the state of your conscience without fiction or pretense. And so I think what makes for, again, we don't love the language, but what makes for a quote-unquote good directee is someone who's willing to do that, willing to state honestly and accurately what exactly is happening, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, who they are in the presence of their director. Those are the ones who will benefit the most from spiritual direction.
Yes. And you're seeing it from the perspective of spiritual direction, which is great and true. However, when they wrote this, they were probably talking about a priest, an ordained person, and going to confession.
Right, yeah.
But it does still apply in both situations.
Yeah.
Yes, the opening up, being vulnerable, as you said. And I'm no expert in languages, but I think vulnerability comes from a word that means wound.
You are an expert in languages, and you are correct. It's from the Latin vulnus, which means wound. Well, and I've often
You're
thought,
better than me. You
I know,
even know the details.
I know. Apparently I'm a Latin expert, and you're a French expert. But I do know this because I've often envisioned vulnerability as saying it's both showing your wounds or woundedness that is at work, but it's also opening yourself up to be wounded. Because if people are clumsy with your vulnerability or say the wrong thing or simply give you an answer or cliche, that is in itself wounding.
A wound, yes.
Right?
So that's why it takes time and trust.
Yes.
It takes time to build up trust in this relationship.
Yeah. What's the most vulnerable thing you shared with your director? You were actually going to answer till I started laughing. Please, go ahead.
I will.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell you. And it's not that long ago, and I think I told you about this. My mother died of colon cancer. And she had some signs. Now, she died in 1999. So there wasn't a lot about colon cancer and ads and that kind of thing at the time. And maybe even the doctors weren't on it. But because she had some signs and nothing was done until it was too late, I was really angry and hurt at her doctor. And it affected me until last year. I would go over it in my head. I wanted to call her. I wanted to see her. I wanted to tell her how she was wrong. And so I brought it to spiritual direction. But I wrote a letter to her. I wrote the actual letter, but I never sent it. I shared it with my director, not knowing I would share it with him. But I decided to share it. I had brought it to my session. And he said he would like to take the place of that doctor. It was a bit of a twist for me because she's a she and he was a he.
Yeah.
However, I agreed to it. And it was so healing to expose my anger, my venom toward this person. And I ripped up the letter before him during that session because I felt there was a healing and I did not have to say that to her. I had said it to him and he had admitted that he was wrong, that he was limited in his actions on behalf of my mother. And, I haven't thought of that since.
Wow.
I've thought about the session I had with my director, but I haven't thought about this doctor with the same venom that I had.
Oh, Mary.
That took a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to hang on to that.
Yeah.
I wanted her to fix it because I wanted my mother back.
Of course. Of course. Wow. Well, thank you for the great honor of sharing that, despite my joke that I thought it was a joke.
I take you seriously,
Apparently.
Suhail.
Thank you. You have shared that with me. And speaking of vulnerability, revealing a deep wound, the anger, yes, but of course the wound of losing your mother, perhaps due to someone's negligence, a doctor's negligence, the wound of that. And then also just making yourself vulnerable in the sense of if your director did a misstep with that very tender wound, that would have been disastrous, right?
Yeah. I think I wouldn't have ripped up the letter. I might have sent it.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So there were a lot of tears.
Yeah, I can imagine. What gave you the courage to manifest your heart, to be vulnerable like that with your director?
I just was not happy being so I mean, because I lived with it for 24 plus years, and I thought, it's time I get over this. Something or get off the pot.
Right.
I just wanted to be over with it. And Riley, my director, was such a open, loving person. He's a 9 on the Enneagram. And he's the best of the 9. You know, very loving and accepting and skillful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I trusted him.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for sharing that. That's a holy story for sure. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that St. Basil and St. Francis de Sales, those quotes were in the context perhaps of the confessional. And at the same time, I often think that this is a good practice, even just with God and prayer, to be able to say what is most real and true, even if we don't like it, even if we wish it wasn't so. I mean, like you said, the Psalms of Lament give us permission to be ourselves in the presence of God, in the presence of the love of God. And that takes practice. And sometimes the way that it grows is you do it with people, and they have, in your case with Riley, a skillful, compassionate response. And you think, oh my goodness, like maybe God is actually like that too. Maybe I can put my venom and my wounds and my doubts and all this, I can lay it all bare before God, and actually laying it bare before my director is a way of laying it bare before God.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's an important quality just in and of itself for us as people of faith, but also for directees, a willingness to lay their soul bare before their director in the presence of God and God's love, right?
Yeah. I also wanted to point that out, Suhail, because I wouldn't want people to think that spiritual direction is about telling your sins. Mm-hmm. It's about telling your sins and telling your successes and telling
everything.
Everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true that sometimes people do tell us their sins. I've certainly told my director my sins. That was probably some of the most vulnerable things I've shared, as a parent, figuring out how to raise 2 little kids and many times being impatient or saying the wrong thing or saying it in the wrong way or the wrong facial expression or the wrong actions or the lack of actions. I mean, I can think of many, many times where I have carried the burden of guilt and shame for failures as a parent specifically, and had the sort of the toss and the turn in my mind. Should I tell my director exactly how this went and how I'm feeling or not? And what will they think of me? And blah, blah, blah. But nonetheless, I've, like you, found the courage, been given the courage to say what was really true. And it has been also very healing. And my directors have been skillful and compassionate and hospitable to that vulnerability, Yeah. But you're right in saying that there's a certain limit that one will find in spiritual direction, the benefit that one will find in spiritual direction if you keep a lid on things.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
There's a benefit?
There's a limit to the benefit a person will receive in direction if they keep a lid on things.
Absolutely.
Like a lid
and
on
I
their
think
life. Yeah.
You and I sharing what we've shared with directors, hopefully it will give people a sense of anything is fodder
That's right.
for spiritual direction.
Yeah. No bad words in prayer. Someone once told me that. It's always stuck with me. Yeah. No bad words in prayer. No bad words to say in the presence of your director. Well, Well, two other ones that come to mind for me. This is implicit, obviously, that you would only do this because you had some sort of loving desire for God. You'd only maybe want to look at yourself, be open to the truth, engage in reflection, be vulnerable and manifest your heart if you thought that that was going to help you in your loving relationship with God or your experience of God's love. And so I think that's a fundamental ingredient in what makes for a quote unquote good directee is they have a loving desire for God, for more of God, whatever that may mean. And they have a willingness to wait. They have a spirit of patience. If you want quick fixes, spiritual direction will be disappointing to you.
Yes. It's a process.
It's not a drive-through.
Yeah. You don't seek if you have it already.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it takes months, if not years, to receive what you were seeking, right? Or to
be ready.
To be ready, to recognize what God was doing or God is communicating or inviting. I mean, it took me years to wrestle through some of those leadership agitations I was mentioning. It took me years to discern an invitation to plant a contemplative community. I mean years. I mean like 4 or 5 years, honestly, in spiritual direction to discern what was emerging, you know. And if I didn't have the patience to stick with spiritual direction, I would. This is not an exaggeration. I literally would never have planted a community ever. You know, it just takes time for things to clarify, both in us and in our sense of God and our experience of God.
And that says something about what spiritual direction is. It's not a fix that might happen in 2 or 3 sessions.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a relationship. It's a process.
Yeah.
It takes time, and you can be in spiritual direction all your life. You know, maybe when you get to be 80, 85, you might not want or need a spiritual director, but...
Yeah. Well, you can tell us when you get there.
Yeah, well, it's not that far off. One thing I wanted to say about sometimes people are stuck with the trauma. I'll just say trauma. Could be anything. And they need to see another professional. So they wouldn't benefit from spiritual direction at that time.
Or maybe exclusively.
Exclusively.
Yeah.
Yes. My tendency has been, and it hasn't happened that often, but I have suggested therapy or counseling for somebody.
Absolutely.
So that they could move on at a deeper level when that is out of the way, whatever it was that was in the way. And that would be something that would take a while too. But it's also, you can have it concomitantly, spiritual direction and therapy.
Yes. I think I'd read something once somewhere where they said if that wasn't possible to have them concomitantly, great word, what we kind of inadvertently communicate to the directee is that you can't really have a meaningful experience of God while you're in this trauma.
Oh.
Which is not what we want to communicate.
No,
but that's not what you're saying. You're saying that sometimes they need to have an intentional course of therapy or whatever it may be alongside direction to benefit from direction. Because there's some traumas or some things that are just sizable blocks in them pursuing a loving desire of God, right?
Yeah.
God's loving desire for them.
One of the things one of my teachers had said comes back to me now, that, you know, even the therapy is where God meets us.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and God is there ahead of time, ready to meet us, whether it's therapy and counseling or spiritual direction. So it depends what we need at the time.
Yeah.
God is already there.
That's right, yeah. Well, finally, to wrap up this section of conversation here, we've talked about what makes for a good, and I'm going to keep air quoting it, quotation marks, what makes for a good directee, someone who will benefit. And then does everyone benefit from spiritual direction? We've talked about that a little bit. And to conclude here, help flesh out for people who are directees. Like, what kinds of people are they? Are they a particular age or particular demographic? Who are some of the directees that you have had?
Well, I can think back on my years of directing, and I do think that many of the men and women, but more women, came in midlife. I think there was just something stirring, some questions arising, some longing. So I think, I think that people in midlife come.
Did you meet with clergy, priests,
Yes,
leaders?
I've male and female clergy, ordinary workers, parents,
Yeah.
single people, gay people.
Yeah.
I've walked with at least one person who was transgendering,
Yeah.
people going through divorce, people healing from, coming around to healing from childhood trauma, sexual abuse. Although that person was totally unaware of it when they first came, but things kept coming up, and was healed during spiritual direction to some extent.
Yeah.
It's not somebody I had to say, maybe therapy.
Yeah.
It just happened during prayer,
Yeah.
just the awareness.
Yeah.
So, I
All sorts.
all sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, all sorts. That
Yeah.
was kind of a candy. Married, single. Yeah.
Yeah. That's been similar for me. I've heard in some spheres, people say, spiritual direction, like leaders must really get spiritual direction, and inadvertently emphasize how important and accessible this is for leaders. And I've heard people who are not leaders in the church, for example, say, well, I never thought I could receive direction because I'm not a leader.
Oh.
And so I would love just to very clearly say, you do not have to be a leader to benefit from spiritual direction. Spiritual direction is for anybody who has the kind of qualities or preconditions we have listed. Now, granted, maybe leaders have some extra irons in the fire that merit direction. But to your point, I've seen people who are single, people who are married or who are dissolving their marriage or divorced, people who are older, people who are in their 20s or 30s. That's usually the youngest. People in leadership in the church, people not in leadership, people in the LGBTQ community, like you mentioned, people who are conservative, people who have, church trauma and have left the church. A whole swath of people, and I love that. People from different denominations, charismatics, Baptists, I love the diversity of people that I get to sit with. And I think for me, it feels very important to clarify that spiritual direction is not just for leaders in the church. It's for anyone who wants to pay deeper attention to their life with God, their life and experience of God.
Yes. Now, from where I come, I would like to say spiritual direction is for leaders.
Right.
Because although I have had a couple of Catholic priests come for direction, by and large, that's not the case.
Interesting.
I would like to say spiritual direction is for leaders in the church.
Yes. Yes.
Because in order to lead, you have to be
led.
Be led. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is people who come for spiritual direction are the ones I needed. The ones I needed at the time.
Yes.
And God has a very funny way of arranging this, because often people will come with issues that I go, oh my God, come to my assistance. I need help here because I can relate to this.
Yeah, that's happened to me as well.
And it's good.
It's very good.
It's good. But I don't say, oh, I know what you think. I know exactly how you feel because I'm going through that. No, that's not the point. It triggers my attention to something I need to pay attention to in spiritual direction or prayer or both.
Yes, that's right.
So just like I like to say to parents, and they've said it to me, I don't get the kids I want. I get the kids I need.
Mm-hmm.
I get the directees I need.
That's beautifully said. I've experienced something similar. Even sometimes when I've been struggling, like I said, with some of the travails of being a parent, I have directees who are also in the thick of parenthood with young kids, and they're sharing almost word for word the same things I have told my director. And it's like, yeah, God is winking at me and loving me. You're not alone.
Yes, you're not alone.
And also you have developed more compassion for this parent in front of you because you have received compassion.
Yes, you can deal compassionately with someone if you're aware of your own struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you heard the phrase a vocation within a vocation described in spiritual direction? Like you're called to be a spiritual director, but within that vocation, there are particular kinds of people God seems to be drawing to you.
Well, I think that's true. I've never seen it as a vocation within a vocation.
Yeah.
I see my vocation as a monastic.
Right.
I don't see... Yeah, I kind of see that even more during this podcast that, maybe spiritual direction was a call.
I'm glad after 40 years of doing it, finally now through this podcast, you have discerned your vocation as a director.
Because I have such a heart for this, even though I didn't want to do the podcast. I really have a heart for spiritual direction. I mean, I'm.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Anyway, enough said.
That's a funny joke. That's a funny joke. Well, I don't know that I have clarity on my vocation within a vocation as a director, but I will tell you that I have really enjoyed and very much felt honored by sitting with people who carry trauma. I'm not a trauma expert. I haven't, gone to school to learn about trauma, and so there's a bit of wariness in me, but there's people who've brought significant church trauma to the point that they've left the church or they're not sure who God is. People who have suffered trauma from, work or other areas of their life or family. And I just notice within myself a deep tenderness and sensitivity to people like that. I would love to see more people of color come. I've had the privilege of sitting with a few people of color, but I'd love to see more people of color come to see me for direction. And people, honestly, from the LGBTQ community, those have been some of my almost favorite directees, favorite experiences, because it just feels like their manifestation of the heart, their vulnerability is so high and so deep. It's just such an honor for me to journey with these people, and the joy I think I feel in these different demographics that I've mentioned. So I'm just kind of paying attention. I wouldn't say I have a vocation within a vocation in those ways, but I'm just paying attention to some of the things that are happening in me as these directees come, So did you have a sense of any particular joy? I know you just found out you were a spiritual director and had the vocation now, but was there any particular group that brought a lot of joy or sense of awe or honor to you?
I love the way you describe your own experience here. I just in general, I feel and felt, particularly at one with people who came with questions and resistance, especially doubting certain things that they were taught. I'm kind of an iconoclast, and I like to question things. So I think I feel at home with people who are experiencing doubts and questions.
Yeah.
Maybe about what they've been taught or, yeah. But that's a new thought for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mary. I consider this episode a particular success because we helped you discern your vocation as a spiritual director.
Once I finished.
That's right. 40-some years, a spirit of patience. That's what's required. So that's great. And thank you again for a lovely conversation.
Thank you,
and,
Suhail. Always good to talk about this.
Yeah, and particularly for your vulnerability today. I appreciate that gift.
I want to say my pleasure, but
My venom.
yeah.
All right, until next time.
Blessings.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.